Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Beauty Outlaw. Thank you for being here. And remember, it's really important to like and subscribe to this channel so we can keep bringing you this amazing content. Today, I'm excited to bring to you anyone that's interested in opening up a med spa. You already own one, a wellness center. You're getting into the world of semaglutides, peptides, all things wellness, and you're ready to launch into that world. I have a way for you to retire. I have someone here today that actually is a broker to prepare your business for sale if you choose to do that in the future. It's an exciting time for this industry. Aesthetics is new and is a baby in the field of private equity. Today, I have someone to help guide you through the process of prepping to sell your business if you choose to do so. And I asking him all the important questions. His name is Bill Walker, and I'm going to introduce you to him right now. So, Bill, I'm so happy to have you here on the podcast today. Before I introduce Bill, though, today I'm excited to bring all you new entrepreneurs, let's call them, that have started their own wellness or aesthetics practices. Today, it's a meeting of the minds. We have the business world meeting the aesthetics med spa world. And I am so excited to have you here. Bill, I know you're the CEO and the owner of Aesthetic Brokers. I'm going to have you explain what that is. But first, I want to know your story. How did you get started in life? College, go take us back.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, Jerri. It's like, I feel like being at your facility is like Beauty and the Beast. So I know which end of that I'm a part of. This is a really amazing facility. I love what you guys have going on here. And for those of you who have not been by to see Jerri and her team, it is flawless and gorgeous, and it's pretty expansive too. So congratulations. You guys have a great operation.
Thank you.
Okay, backdrop. I'm a Midwest kid. So I
love that.
I've been in California for years now, but grew up in the Midwest. And my previous life, I was a Marine pilot coming out of undergrad.
Super cool. Oh my goodness.
A lot of fun, a lot of excitement.
Thank you for your service.
America's worth it. Right?
Amen to that.
And then after the Marines, I got into evaluating companies and looking at businesses, and had a very entrepreneurial spirit. I did some consulting and advising in the startup space, which you can imagine would be a natural progression of aerospace and tech. And then migrating into a whole litany of other things to finally arrive at health and wellness. And
that's a circle.
Got into post-grad school, got into the mergers and acquisitions, consolidation of healthcare practices, backdrop on that. Ended up on the buy side, which afforded me an incredible education on what exactly private equity firms and their portfolio companies leadership are looking for in a quality healthcare practice. And I think, looking at my experience with the cosmetic space through a dental lens afforded me an opportunity to see what was being neglected in a very burgeoning industry in a field where a lot of people, when you talk about entrepreneurs, and I've heard you talk about this before, a lot of entrepreneurs just didn't have quality representation for when they were big and successful and ready to make the next step, whether it was to take financiers' investment or to sell their practice and take an equity stake in a larger group of like-minded individuals, or to do a complete exit strategy altogether. They just weren't given great counsel and sage advice. And so I really wanted to change that. And that's why we built Aesthetic Brokers. to be that representation for when an individual decides they want to take the next step in their succession planning. So
That's exciting because I feel personally, being in business the 35 years or plus that I've been in business, the one thing
So Jerri started when she was
I
9
was
years old.
18.
She was 9 years old.
That's for another podcast, right? Thank you for the compliment. I feel like one thing we don't do as entrepreneurs is we're visionaries. So it doesn't matter where you start as an entrepreneur or what field you're in, but especially in the medical realm, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a visionary. You just see right in front of you the moment, and that's what makes us so amazing. But the one thing we don't put into our prospective business plan is our end game.
Yeah.
How does it look at the end? What do we want that to look like? And I find it very interesting that in today's society, with maybe the internet and social media, I've become extremely aware of this. This is important to do. It's important to have, you'll talk about it, but I feel like it's important to have a good accountant, first of all, to set your business up, an attorney, and maybe add to it now a visionary financially. What's your end game? Whether that be someone that is a broker that helps you set up and maybe plan your end game. And that's what you do, right? Do you kind of help people do that?
We do. I think one of the things that I would tell anybody when you're starting out your practice is first things first, get a good accountant and know your numbers, right? Because every dollar matters so much when you're starting out. Also, I tell people all the time, negotiate a really good, favorable lease, because a lot of
very
people,
good advice.
A lot of people don't think about it. Like, you in a very short amount of time, on a 2-year, a 4-year, a 5-year, a 10-year plan of the next step, at some point you're going to have an escalator that goes into effect for your rent. You're going to have some sort of 5-year plus another 5-year option. You're going to have a 5-year plus another back-to-back 5-year options for me to renew. Those things you've got to keep in mind, that cost can sneak up on you if you don't have a good game plan of where you want to grow to decrease that as a percent of your revenue going out the door every month. And then the other thing about those little nuggets is you may exit quicker than what you thought you were going to, because the market is so frothy, and you decide, like, I thought I was going to build this thing to $10 million, and maybe I decided to build it to 5, or I was going to build this to $5 million and I'm going to build it to 2 or 3, right? And you get to whatever stage of life, something happens. And maybe you were still on a path to build out this massive enterprise, and you say, whoa, something significant happened in my life. You need multiple exit ramp opportunities. And one of those things that you've got to consider too, and I always tell people, if you don't know whether or not you can have a transferable clause that is approved by the landlord, if you need to, like, transfer your business, your LLC.
You're speaking of, like exiting business and giving it up to someone else, but you're stuck in a lease.
But you're stuck in a lease. Or, I mean, you could have a subtlety even that, like, you envisioned doing something for 10, 15 years and you wanted to hand it off to a kid, to one of your kids, right? That was your family plan. It was like, I want to build this business. I want it to be great. I want them to have it and run it how they want to run it, because they know how I've run it in the past decade or 2 decades. And then you can't because of a technicality in your lease. Those are subtleties to think about at the beginning and the onset, because you'll establish the relationship, right? You'll be a great tenant and the landlord will want you to continue to up your lease. But that's just a subtlety, is when private equity knocks at the door and offers you an offer that you just never thought was going to be possible, you don't want anybody else to stand in the way of your decision-making except for you, right?
So you're saying prep for this. When you go into business, these are things these are the nuances that you need to think about before diving in, because life happens.
Yeah, life
And
happens.
you need to have always an exit plan, no matter what stage of business you're in. If you're an infant, the middle stage, or the late stage, you need an exit plan. What does somebody do? Okay, say we have somebody, they've been in business a year. Okay. They're in a shopping mall. They've got pretty high volume. They're doing a lot of new patient business. Their numbers are pretty good. Is that the time to try to meet with someone like you to set up a game plan for the next 5-10 years? Or is that too soon? Are we talking too soon to talk to somebody like you?
It's a no kidding answer. It all depends. And the reason I say that is I'll give some specific examples so that some of your audience will maybe be like, okay, I have a tangent point that I can relate to. The most attractive offers that are going to be out there from these large financiers, right? These very successful private equity firms, they like continuity of the patient care and they love continuity of leadership. And so some of the best offers that are going to be out there are going to be a 5-year partnership, right? They're looking for a long-term relationship with you on the go forward because they don't want a chop shop. They want a well-run, well-respected pillar in that neighborhood, in that community. And that's what people come to you for. They come to your listeners. They come to them because they trust them with some of their most personal and intimate exposed moments in their lives and of how you make them feel, of confidence that you instill in them. And so they want that same feeling for those patients on the go forward. And if they're going to cut a big check to invest in that, they want to know that is going to still be there. And so I say that to say, you can plan long-term now for 5 years from now, right? You can plan long-term now to do a deal in 2 years, and there's still a 4 or 5 year commitment that you're going to put on the backside. So it's like one of the last things you're likely going to think about is, when am I going to be ready to sell? But some people may have a very fruitful career. Let's use an example of someone who's been working in an ER for 10 or 15 years. And maybe they did this, the aesthetic space, as something that was complementary to their previous professional role. And they decide to amplify that complementary spa into something that becomes their focus of effort. And so you may not have like a 10 or 15 or 20 year runway in mind, because you're like, hey, my spouse or my significant other is going to retire in 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? And we want to spend a lot more time together, or we want to visit our kids that are in college and playing sports, or whatever that might look like for each individual. And so I say, like, everybody's leaping off point is going to be different. It has nothing to do with age. It has everything to do with your career and your personal goals. And so one of the best things you can do, I've always tried to take this advice, was have a conversation with somebody, because it costs you a half hour to have a conversation, to like squirrel that piece of information in the back of your head, for having somebody you can reach out to when you need to talk to someone you think it's the right time.
That's great. And that's why I really wanted to bring this into the conversation, because aesthetics, it's taken about 10 years to get highlighted, really, probably to get the market to pay attention. So now we find private equity is like hovering like helicopters, right? They know this is a new baby that they can invest in and triple their money. I mean, when private equity pays attention, there's a reason. And COVID did that for us. COVID spiked the numbers. But I wonder now, was COVID, I want your advice, could it have been a false sense of a surge because of the money that was infused in others' pockets? What do you think of that?
Well, I would say impacts of COVID can like vary across the gamut, right? I think when I look at what are the impacts from a macro perspective on something like a pandemic, there's things that I'm looking for that are sticky. And what are things that are sticky, and what are things that have been released into the wild again? things that are sticky, video calls. Video calls are here to stay.
Oh, telemed.
Telemed,
Telemed.
is
Telemed.
here to stay.
Okay. That surged it. That made it go crazy.
I think
Changed medicine.
I think specifically one psychological nuance for people about the work calls, the business side of their lives, of having to be on video calls, they're looking at themselves on camera a lot, right? And so people want to feel good. They want to feel confident about how they look on camera when they're on meetings that maybe they just weren't, their eye wasn't drawn to when they were in person more. And it just makes them aware. And so I think the industry benefited from that. And I think that's something that's going to stay. I think when you look from a macro perspective, there was a dip in a lot of geographic areas, a lot of production mix areas across practices for variant reasons in the second half of 2023. And people are going to speculate and as to why. But if you look at a macro level, just look at healthcare merger and acquisitions. They dipped in the second half of 2023. So there's so many complexities that go into trying to put a finger on and pinpoint, like, was this or that good or bad about COVID? Is this going to stay? Was that non-recurring? I think the short answer is what we know to be true. The industry has had a couple decades now of a strong base to build a credible healthcare patient focus. 2, people want to look and feel good, and they care about how they age gracefully, more so now than they ever have in any other poll in the past 5 decades. And the younger generations that we are seeing coming up through the ranks that have discretionary spending are choosing to do preventative. And that looks like a very long runway. And if you mix it all in with a fee-for-service model for a lot of the industry, there's a cash-based pay.
Cash pay business.
I think that the future is incredibly bright for med spa owners.
With not wrapping up the podcast, but wrapping up this topic, what does an attractive business look like? Is it diverse? Does it tap into all avenues, whether it be wellness in the peptide area, along with skincare, along with devices such as laser and injectables? Or can they be independent of that and be one dynamic, meaning just an injectable spa, just a skincare spa? What do you think? What is private equity looking at?
So that's a great question. I think at a deeper level, you're going to see different investment theses on why they want to invest in a particular sector or why they want to invest in a particular group of practices, right? I can give you guys an example of a multi-site group of practices that were heavy injectables purposefully, right? From their inception. And their game plan was to get a foothold through that medium and then to expand ancillary services, right? Bring in the lasers, bring in your other treatments.
Be good at one thing and then expand on that.
Yeah, right. That's an Orville Redenbacher. I quote Orville Redenbacher on that all the time, right? Do one thing and do it
one
better
thing good
than, do it better than anybody else. Like do popcorn, and then whatever comes after that, right? So, I mean, we take a page out of that book. We focus on aesthetics. We focus on representing doctors, PAs, nurse practitioners, business owners who are focused on aesthetics, right? Cosmetic derm, plastic surgery. So when you talk about, to answer your question a little more in depth, when you talk about like, what are they looking for? If you have a great service mix production that's varied, and you show a track record of being able to take a patient and making that consumer realize that you can get added benefit from doing a multi-treatment plan. That's what I see actually as like one of the value adds very recently. People are starting to realize, look, this is a game plan, right? Like we need to add 2 or 3 lines of care to this particular area if you want the maximum benefit, and it's not a one and done. And so that is, I think, starting to resonate with people who have more discretionary income. Is like, you can have a $500 solution, you can have a $5,000 solution, you can have a $15,000 solution. It really comes down to like, what kind of gains do you want to see? And then how prominent do you want those results to be enhanced? And then how long do you want it to stay in effect? And I don't want to get out over my skis because that's your specialty. I just know from talking to clinicians what they're seeing in their practices. Private equity cares that people know their numbers, they are reputable, and they know their medical procedures, and they know what their patients' needs are, and how to care for people safely.
What about the person like me that has my practice that's basically developed on me, my concepts, my belief
The
system?
hangman syndrome.
I leave, I abandon the ship. What happens to who's driving the ship? Is private equity going to do that? So is what I'm saying is that a
Key man risk.
key man risk? Exactly.
You don't want to be the key man risk.
Which
in
is
your
why
practice.
you want to pay to keep them on.
So
Right?
so that is a play. That is a consideration at hand with investors of any kind of investor, that they're going to say, well, if you leave and you were producing $1.5 million of the $2 million of revenue for the practice, and you don't stay anymore, who's going to have that patient handoff, and who's going to be doing that production? They want to incentivize those people to stay and continue to grow the practice because they're growth mindset people. These are very successful businessmen and women, and they want a growth mindset from anybody they partner with. So to your point, it is a risk of consideration for them. One of the most effective things you can do is building out your practice. Inevitably, if you're like the owner operator kind of model, like you're the nurse practitioner, you're the PA that built this thing, you're likely going to be the top producer, right? And so what you'll have to do over time is figure out, okay, how do I make myself less significant in the chair and more significant in the practice, so that I can delegate my attention to the people who can influence multiple people. That's an art. And trying doing it over 2 or 3 locations is even more impressive. And I can tell you that you start to get into the tunnel of darkness when you start to try and do it over 4 or 5 or 6 locations, because you kind of get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm Superwoman, I'm Superman, and I go back and forth between 2 locations or 3 locations. And then you start to get into where you're like, okay, wait, I'm doing the office work 1 day a week. I'm at 2 or 3 sites multiple days of the week.
I'm cleaning toilets. I'm doing all that.
You're doing everything.
Everything.
You're doing everything. The light bulb needs fixed.
Yes, you're doing it.
Yeah.
You're spread yourself too thin. All right. So say in my situation with mergers and acquisitions, with the practice like I have, since I am the one that is at the head of it, I'm the one that brings in the most income for the business. How does that look if we decide, because there's a lot of you out there with businesses like mine. We are the key man, like you like to say.
The key woman.
The key woman.
Risk.
And risk, the key man risk. How do merger and acquisition, since you would be the broker, how does something like that work? I'd have my skin in the game a long time for the transfer and let say private equity come in and rework the business while I stay on board. How does that look?
So there's a variety of ways that they'll go into this this whole scenario and approach a partnership. And it varies from firm to firm, and it varies from practice to practice that they're going to partner with. Let me just give like a garden variety example, right? You're a practice owner. You want to stay for 4 years for whatever reason. And you say like, I am out at 4 years. Okay. There are great deals that can be had, right? There's a great deal that can be had at 1 year of transition. There's a great deal to be had at 2 years and 3 years. The best deals typically are going to be with the example of the owner operator who's the heavy producer. The best deals for them are typically going to be some sort of a 5-year partnership commitment where you stay on and you draw a percent of production or however you're incentivized as a W-2 salary, because now you're an employee of the practice. And your name, your image, your likeness, your culture, your vibe, as you like to talk about your practice is the vibe.
Yeah.
Your guys' vibe stays on point, right? Those are important factors. So what they want to do is they want to structure a deal that's mutually beneficial to everybody. You will see variants of the model from an asset purchase agreement that's 100% purchase of the practice, whereby you get a majority percentage of it in cash. You get a minority percent of it in equity. And equity would mean like if it was a publicly traded company, you would think of it in shares, right? But in privately held companies, you think of them in units. But as an example, let's say you get shares of equity, right? And so you get a percentage of equity. And the goal is that as a team, you're all committed and focused with your practice and 30 or 40 or 50 other practices that are out there. Are all,
like the mothership.
They're all under the umbrella of the portfolio company that provides the back office and the corporate support that you all need to be successful and continue to grow the practice and focus on what most people really got into the business on the first place, which was they liked working with their clients and their patients and not worrying about doing payroll and doing hires and let goes and thinking about how are they going to negotiate this next expansion of their lease, or how are they going to come up with money to finance a second location because they have grown so much, so fast that they think there's a spot that's, 10 miles down the road that's not competing but is complementary, and they want to grow in that fashion. They need the financial backing to do it. That's what these guys do really well.
So I think I see what you're saying. Private equity is a bunch of guys that throw money in a pot. Then you have other people go out and buy up these not buy them up, merge with them maybe, buy them. Low risk, high risk. So even if you think you're not a med spa that is making a ton of money, or you think you're not value to this purchase, you possibly could be, because that's what this is all about, right? If you have a mothership of private equity with all this money and you have these investors come in, you may be a potential seller to a buyer with whatever you have because you're part of a larger plan.
Yeah.
And their goal is to have you do what you do best, what got you started, back off the back end, let them run it, build it, grow it, and you get a piece of the pie.
Yeah. And also, too, another thing to think about is, look, their goal, they want to provide successful returns to their investors and to the healthcare providers that are owners in these practices, right? That's what they want to do. That's what private equity does. They want to give outsized returns. And the way to do that is to make a very efficient operation footprint in the background to support those care providers, those doctors, those NPs, those PAs, those RNs. That's what they want to do and elevate their game. So
Hardest part of owning your own business.
So they can focus on those things. Now, I will tell you that, the returns can be impressive. And it really comes down to, a lot of times too, is picking the right culture fit, because you might find a couple of private equity firms that really resonate on the financial upside that you might see. And so it's really about culture fit of like, well, who's in the C-suite in the leadership at the portfolio company, what is their ethos, right? What is important to them as an individual, and does that resonate to me of how I built my business and how I built my client base? And then I think, overall, one other thing I would say is they want a good partner. They genuinely want a good partner. And so be straightforward, be candid about what you want out of the relationship. And they'll return that in kind. But typically when we come into the mix, one of the hardest things is to negotiate on your own behalf. I mean, statistics will tell you that you're always going to get a better deal if somebody's negotiating on your behalf.
And that's what your company does.
And that's one of the things
That's
we
what
do.
one of the things you do. You started on the buyer's end, you said, and now you're actually brokering deals for people in healthcare. You've been doing that a while, right?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. This episode is sponsored by Pretty Girl Cosmeceuticals. These products are the best. If you're not using them, you need to use them. You can contact JKH Aesthetics anytime, and we will give you a consultation about how to use these amazing products. We have Glow Girl and Ice Drops. These will keep you young, healthy, and glowing every day of the week. And now, back to the episode. And I have a fun little game I want to play with you.
Oh boy. Okay.
So, I'm going to ask
Is there
you
a
a
prize?
question.
Is there a prize? If there's a prize,
Oh gosh, is there a prize?
Let's make it a
yes,
competition.
glass of champagne.
I love it.
At the end, we're going to toast to. Well, I
right.
might even give you 2 glasses.
I gotta
Just
drive
kidding.
after this.
He's got to drive home. We won't do that, officer. You didn't hear that. Okay, so here's
Okay.
how it's going to work. All right, I'm going to ask you a question, and you literally get just. I want a quick answer, and we're going to go quick.
All right.
Okay.
5. Blue.
That's basically it. Okay, give me a second here, guys. I know we're on okay.
I
What?
feel like I need a button.
Here,
like a
you
buzzer.
do.
Like
What does M&A stand for?
mergers and acquisitions.
What does EBITDA stand for?
EBITDA.
EBITDA. I
Or
said it
depending
wrong.
on your age group, EBITDA. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Say that louder one more time.
Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's what you're going to make after you pay all your bills. Pay yourself for doing the injections, a fair market wage, back out all of your Bruno Mars tickets, back out your personal car payment, and then whatever's left over at the bottom, that's kind of like where you're at roughly on your earnings.
Perfect. What does the industry landscape look like right now? Is it red hot? Is it warm? Or is it cool?
It's warm. Now, you gave me 3 choices. You gave me vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry.
We were only supposed to answer the one. It's cool. Did you say it's cool?
I said it's warm.
It's warm. Okay.
And so here's why. I think that there was a little bit of a hangover on the backside of 2023 that people were trying to bake into their investment thesis. And because of that, they were wanting to calculate where interest rates were going to fall out in the markets. And I think it is, as a result, warm. And I think it's going to be red hot over the next 12 months.
You heard it. It's going to be red hot. Okay. In one answer, and I want a number. What's the biggest deal you've brokered?
Okay, so I'm not allowed to disclose that, but I will tell you that it is a larger.
Over 50 million.
I'm not allowed to tell you that, but I will tell you it's a larger 8 million. A larger 8. I'm trying to think of digits here. A larger 8-digit deal,
Okay.
and I'll just leave it at that.
What is the smallest deal?
Oh, good
that you've
question.
done?
It's actually one of my favorite deals. It was a smaller 6-digit deal. I'm agnostic, by the way. Like, I'm going to just share that. Like, I like to partner and represent with good, solid, and fun people. And I'll go to the mat for them, but I really like to partner with good people. So the size of the practice is not as important as the quality of the owner.
How long does it take to sell a business if you wanted to do it quick?
That's
Loaded
a
question.
loaded question. I mean, like, I don't want anybody to sell in a fire sale. Like, I just don't.
Great advice, because it takes time.
But
You got to get your ducks in a row.
I will tell you, it is not uncommon to plan strategically for a year to 2 years. It's not uncommon to plan for 2 to 3 months, and in a period of about 9 months, do a deal.
So I want to say, Bill, thank you so much for being here. It's interesting because of the world where we're in different parts of the brain, right? There's finance, and then there's science and medicine. And sometimes in science and medicine, we have a difficult time shifting to that realm. It's not how we were educated in our schools. In nursing school, even in graduate degrees, we don't go through finance. We don't learn that. So I really think it's important that a business like yours, Aesthetic Brokers, give them a call. You'll take people's calls, right? What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
You can go to our website,
Okay.
aestheticbrokers.com. It's not very complicated.
Can they can't just call your cell phone?
They can actually. You know what? And I do that on purpose. Like, I genuinely want to be available to people. I'm on West Coast time, so
Don't forget that.
the phone number that's on is my phone. And
You can reach out. Any questions? And what's the call to action you would give someone? If someone is going into a deal right now, say their situation has been in business for a long time, their situation has come to them in life where they need an exit plan. Maybe they don't feel they're prepared, they don't know, but they're ready just to sell to the person that just showed up at their front door. What would you tell them to do? Give you a call?
yeah, I mean, obviously, I think, I tell my team, like, it should be about what their goals are. Just get a second opinion from somebody who is a professional that can help. I'll always jump on a 30-minute call with somebody to, like, help give them a perspective of, like, this is what you told me in 25 minutes. If I were you, these are some things I would consider. Like, that's just sound advice. I think,
That's
for anybody.
wonderful, Bill, because not a lot, that's hard to find. So don't be afraid to reach out to people, especially Bill and his team, because don't get involved in anything until you've had that second opinion. And don't think we know it all, because in this industry, there's a lot we don't know, especially when it comes to the finance side and selling our practice. That's not what we are always good at. So it's wonderful that we have resources like you. And thank you so much, Bill, for being here today, making the trip down the 5 freeway to visit us. He's in La Jolla
Yeah.
in San Diego, and we're here in Southern California for you that are watching. So we're not too far away. So I'm going to be picking his brain after this podcast goes off, and we'll let you know what he says afterwards. So thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Jerri.
And we have a little toast. I promised you that toast. And we're a little lagging back there in the bar. What do we do? Bill, do you have any questions for me while we're waiting for our chin chin?
Well, I think one of the really interesting perspectives to hear is what do people who are practice owners hear and think about the consolidation of practices in the market? Because I always find that interesting to hear perspectives, because I feel like there's just a lot of a lot of rumors that can be dispelled, you know?
I would agree. Real quick, I'll answer that. There is more negative than there is positive. So right now, people are a little worried about that. But because I think it's because of the old days of the whole private equity, the buy-in, the mergers and acquisitions,
Yeah.
but that's a long time ago. And I think what I love about what you guys are doing is you guys are opening the door for a business plan that actually gives you the end game. And so if you're new in business, be open to how you're going to get out of this. And you could actually guide them in that plan. Whether it's short term or long term, you'll have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. I think it's a great thing for this business. It's only $17 billion right now, right? And
Doing your homework. Very good.
yeah. And dental is like crazy.
About 10 times, right? 10
$200 billion.
I think
That's why you see a dental office on
less
every
than that.
corner, including just one built right here in my center. So we have a lot of work to do in aesthetics, and so do you. And that's why private equity's perked up.
Yep.
We have a lot to offer. Here we're going to chin chin.
All right.
That's what we call it.
I like it.
What do you call it? Back in the Marine days. Let's do a Marine.
In the Marine days, we'd probably break this glass in our hands accidentally.
I should have like a beer,
And-
right?
I'd probably get fined for putting my cover on the bar.
One more
accidentally.
question, Kyler, then we're done. One more question. When you're up in an airplane with that G-force, what's the G-force? What's the fastest that you can go? Because I know nothing about pilots.
Well,
And
so man, you're talking out of my wheelhouse here. So G-forces, this has been a while. G-forces, you can.
well, you're a pilot.
So you could get up in this 7, 8 Gs. That's a lot of Gs. If you're talking about speed, you got buddies of mine that have gone, broken the sound barrier. You go
That's
Mach 1, Mach
that's
1 and a
crazy.
half.
I was wondering if you were, when you were up in the plane and you were a pilot, what the things you were thinking about.
I was thinking someday I want to be sitting in Southern California
Right here.
with Jerri on her podcast, cheersing champagne for getting my answers right.
I love it. And we love Bill.
Cheers.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.